lovely cheesecake. It actually has like sugared blackberries on the top. Very yummy. Does anyone want some? It's really good. You want some? Okay.
Oh gosh.
Okay, hold on. No one wants a piece?
Oh, sure I do.
You do?
Oh my gosh, Sarah, I cannot believe you just did that.
No, funny, I got this from somewhere and people threw it at me.
Leslie, you can just pass it around.
Except she goes dump in my lap. My head.
Close, I dropped your fork. It went on the laptop. Okay. There you go. Okay, does anyone else want a piece? I have more. And you can even have some of those pretty sugared blackberries on there. Does anyone want that one? I'll put it on
I think Netta wants
Everyone's
some.
scared.
You'll take one?
It's worth it.
I know, I said I think Netta wants some.
Netta wants some? Who wants some? She chose good for me. I actually kind of tried to think. Okay, so Netta, you get yours on a pretty little plate. Okay, so I'll get it thrown at you. I do have napkins for you. I don't actually have an extra one though. Yeah, it's pretty sticky.
I have baby wipes in my purse.
Hey, you are prepared. Look at you. I don't have baby wipes anymore. So the whole point of this is that no matter how wonderful our message is or how inspiring the topic that you're going to be teaching, if we don't present it in a way that the kids are interested, then it goes straight over their head. They tune it out. I know this isn't always the case, but whenever my kids say something like, I hate math, I hate history, I think I did something wrong. Because there's something in that presentation, the way that I presented it to them, that made them hate it. And some of the times when my daughters have gone to high school, they've actually learned that they really love a subject that they thought they hated because someone else was presenting it. And so today, Cassandra asked me to talk about activities. And I know that this next year we are going to be talking, we're going to kind of be basing our curriculum on the Come Follow Me method. And so I wanted to talk about the different activities that they suggest in the Come Follow Me lesson plans. On the website, if you just like Google lds.org and Come Follow Me, then they have lists of all these different ways to teach the different pieces of the lesson. And when I was in Young Women's and using it, I basically prepared in a way where I studied until I really knew the topic really well. And then I went to their list and said, yeah, that's how I want to introduce it. That's how I want to present the main part. And I would just choose one little thing from each piece, and my lesson always came together in a really good way. And the activities are made to really stretch the kids and to involve them. And so the lists that I gave you are from their website. I kind of tweaked them a little bit so they apply a little bit more to our group. But they have different sections. So the first one was activities to help you review the topic that you talked about last week. And that can be that can look different depending on what you feel like meets your classes needs a lot. Sometimes I would start off by writing a question up on the board, and I would actually tell the kids, and it would be for like the main learning part, but I would tell the kids as soon as they walked in, I want you guys to think about this question. And then we would go back and we review kind of what we talked about last week, how they applied it. And by the time, 10 minutes later when we get to that question, they've actually all been thinking about that too while we were reviewing. And And so they're all ready to have really great answers. I forget who it was, but they talked about the importance of having silence. And I think a lot of these activities could result in some awkward silence, but I think that that's where the growth happens. And so I think that that's something we can't be afraid of. Okay, so after the activities to review, they have introducing the concept, and then they have teaching the concept, activities to help teach the concept, and they have basically activities to help you look at other people's lives and how they have benefited or how they're examples of whatever you're teaching that day. And then sharing the concept and making plans on how to live it. And I think that I think it's really important that basically we prepare, and then we have an activity that will really engage them. One of my favorite teachers was one who she would always have the young women, she would call a young woman and say, will you please prepare this object lesson? And she'd give them one, you know, and they would come ready. They'd prepare the object lesson. It was like an intimidating way to teach the lesson. And they would prepare it and start off the class that way. And then that particular student, of course, is much more engaged than the rest of the class, but so is everyone else. You know, it's a really good way to start off a lesson and to get everyone going. Now, I am basing this all on the older kids. I was going to talk about little kids, but it's okay, because I feel like everyone's talked about that a lot already. But I feel like a lot of these are stretching activities. There's, you know, having them go through their book, whatever book you're studying at that time, and having them split up and putting them each in charge of a quote and tearing that quote apart, and then everyone getting together and discussing it. You know, I have a really short attention span. I could possibly be ADD, I don't know. But I do not like listening to someone just talk to me over and over. And when someone involves me in the learning, it forces me to get it, ultimately. I'm like a little kid. And so I think that all of these activities, I look at them and I think that would draw me in. That would get my attention. And I think that it falls that way with a lot of the different kids and their learning styles. There are so many different options in here that the church has put out that I think they can draw in all different types of learning styles and engage the kids differently. And so, of course, all of our classes will look a little different. Sometimes we'll have a lot of kinetic learners, and sometimes we have a lot of people that really do just like listening. But I think that it's important for us to look at the different styles and really stretch the kids through the activities. Another thing that I found that worked really well whenever I ask questions or do anything that requires feedback, to give them time to write down their answers and to really to process it. And I'm, once again, and it's probably because I'm this way, but I don't like if someone just asked me up here and just said, you know, and asked me a question, I don't know what I would say. I really need time to process. And I feel like a lot of kids are that way. And sometimes you'll have a quiet person in your class that would not participate otherwise. But if you will give them a moment and also have them write, then they're definitely writing something. It might not apply to the class, but generally it does. And they have the time to process and come up with their answer or their thoughts, and then they can share it. And so I think all of those are little tools we can use, but ultimately I think that the Come Follow Me website is a great resource for us. And as we are coming up with our curriculums, if we will go through and offer up, and that's kind of the way the lessons are made. They have, you know, like 3 or 4 options in the different sections. And so if we offer up some of these and apply them, you know, they'll look different according to what you're teaching, but all of these could be applied to a myriad of different lessons. And so if we'll go through and kind of apply them as we're making our curriculum, then the person teaching, if they prepare, then they can just pick the ones that will help formulate their message that they want and to really involve the kids so that the kids will leave having learned something. And one of the most important list of activities is the very last last one, and it's the making plans to live the concept. And that's ultimately, I mean, especially with some of our leadership classes that we're gonna have this year, I mean, Valerie and I are teaching one on finances, and if we just have this great conversation, but the kids don't leave with any action item, then I think it would be an absolute failure. And so it's important to have this always be your end, have something where the kids are gonna have some activity that they will be involved in that week that will help them integrate that concept into their life so that they can continue their learning. Because until they, you know, really internalize it, it's gonna be useless.
I think the more that we can make that a part of our culture as a group across all the levels with the action item and the review at the beginning, so that the kids become accustomed to that's what we do here.
Yeah.
And it's fun to come and hang out and be here and see your friends, but it's not just that. And so it will take some training of us as mentors, of us as parents, and then of the kids as well. But if we get consistent across the board with, we are giving them an action item, whether or not they do it, but they know that it's what we do.
Yeah.
And that we will follow up too, because if we're not following up, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, yeah. We really need to remember that. And ultimately, and I know Priscilla kind of mentioned this, but sometimes we don't feel like they ever do what we ask them to at home, you know, especially in the younger ages. But if they see enough people in their class follow up, then they will. I taught one of the Love of Learning classes. I did like a little Korean class with the kids, and each week I gave them a vocabulary list. And it wasn't like you have to learn this, but it was, if you learn this, there was some sort, like I had little buttons and stuff that they would get. And we would come with 2 kids having learned the vocabulary, and then the other ones would be like, oh, wait a minute. And because those 2 kids followed up, the other kids started doing it. And so if we make sure that we do it, and then there becomes a culture of, oh, look, everyone else did it, and I'm missing out on this part of the conversation, part of the growth, then we can get them, but we have to follow up to do that. Yeah.
We have to, so with our little, so I did the 5 and 6-year-olds quite a bit this year, and so I started at the end of class asking them, like, what did you learn this class? And so we'd sit down in a circle at the last 5 minutes, and they loved that. And then it like they all had something to contribute. I don't do it every time, but when we did, it was really good. And I thought,
Yeah.
it's starting to use this, starting then to like think about how the lesson had to do with them and what they're taking away from it.
That's really great, and really reinforcing that right there when it's fresh, before they go home.
It was kind of reminding me of that. So
Yeah.
Part of the things that we want to change up is the requirements. Instead of them being requirements that kind of relate, but they're not as directly. We want to make them more experience-based on, so what you just learned, that action item that you go home with, that is what the requirements or the experiences we want you to go home and continue your learning. So as we're designing our classes, we want to think about how I can have an experience that they can take home with them and do at home that continues this learning. And that's the requirements we're looking for. They're really experiences to continue the learning that we started in class. And so trying to figure out how to prepare that and write that down ahead of time will be a challenge, but that's what we're looking for.
Yeah.
The experiences to continue learning at home.
Well, that is really tricky because a lesson can turn into something very different. Just like with Come Follow Me, you can go and talk about one thing, and once you start asking kids questions, the lesson morphs. You know, it really changes to what they need. But if we can somehow foresee that, you know,
Figure out a way to adapt it or, be adaptable in that transformation.
because ultimately that will be way more beneficial to them. So that's really great. Does anyone else have any other comments or thoughts? Anything that worked really great for you guys this year where you did an activity and you were like, that was amazing. I should do that every week. Yes.
I'll just share, I think, what I felt like was the best learning experience that I did this year, the transition kids, was after we read a book about survival, like group survival, I split them up into groups. But then I gave a list of like supplies that they would maybe consider taking on a survival, like if they were needing to survive, kind of like Oregon Trail, if any of you are familiar with like that game. And they had to individually number in order of priority 1, 2, and 3, like what they thought was their first priority, their second priority, and their third priority. And then in their groups, they had to come up with only the things, after they made their own individual list, their own things of what would only be first priority. And so they had to work, after they had already like made their own decisions about what was important to them, then they had to work together as a group to figure out what it was that, was most important to them. And then they had to then they presented, and so then they had to explain, what it was they did, what they chose and why. It was interesting to just hear the discussions, and that is not something that comes as naturally to me, like to think about an activity that engages that way. And what I love seeing is it really did engage them versus some of my preparation for that thing. I felt like I leaned a little bit more on like dissemination of information. Not with everything, but I found that that's where I started losing them more. And so anyway, this is interesting because that was what I think really brought it home more than I think.
I think in general, we can really count on kids tuning you out as long as you're like talking for more than just a few minutes, just giving them information. And that's why this is such a beautiful program, in that it draws it out of them and they're finding out the information. I just think it makes it so much more compelling for them.
It just reminded me of one that Emily Goody did with the LOL 8 to 10s this year. We were just learning about rockets and space, and so at the end, last half hour or so, she just put a huge piece of butcher paper on the table and said, okay, we need to design a Mars city. You're sent to Mars, what is it going to need to look like? What are the houses going to look like? What else do you need to survive? And that was a great thinking exercise, very open-ended. Everyone could surround the butcher paper and write their piece. Okay, we're going to do a garden. How are we going to do a garden? So I really like that kind of thinking activity. But it had parameters so they could kind of know what to do and they weren't just lost. So it's kind of a challenge, similar kind of thing. It's like anytime there's a challenge and then parameters around that gives them creativity and problem solving and stuff. So
That's really awesome. I think just about anything Emily Goody does is amazing. She's my hero. She's not here to hear that, but she is. Okay, so basically, I just want to encourage you guys, remember the cake, and basically you can make any wonderfully compelling lesson horrible with if you just drone on. And so pull some activities in, and hopefully it can really engage the girls. I have all daughters. Sorry guys. The kids, the youth, in a way where they can really internalize the material.
Thank you, Sarah.